Hey everyone, Kevin Wagstaff here. This is part 2 of the interview with Sheehan Thomson. If it feels like you're jumping in the middle, that's because there is a part 1 as well. So make sure to go back and listen to that. That is more broadly applicable to everyone, not just home inspectors. Kind of tells his backstory and a little bit of his entrepreneurial background. So if you want the first part of it, go check it out. But hope you enjoy the second part of the interview with Sheehan. And again, on this one as well, there's a little bit of video quality issues that blur his face a little bit. His camera is actually really, really good, an expensive camera. So it actually tried to autofocus on his face too much at times. So I apologize for that on the video version, but for those of you listening to this through podcast, you don't have to worry about that. So I hope you enjoy part 2 of the interview with Sheehan.
So I kind of got other agents, but even to this day, we're really not good at agent retention. We have a lot of one and dones, what they call them, where they just do one job. Mm-hmm. And we don't really have a follow-up process because I've gotten busy with managing things. And so there's a lot that we're missing out on. And I think if we actually had a marketing person, I don't want people to think like, oh, let's do it the way Sheehan did, and he didn't have to talk to any agents or go into a real estate office. If I would have done that from the beginning, I'd probably be at 4,000 inspections a year instead of 1,700.
Right.
So it's important to do both because the online stuff gives you security. If the market crashes and you lose agents, then you still have that security of, you don't want to be at like 97% agent referral.
Right.
So you want a good mix of referrals. But yeah, starting out, it was just taking that leap and serving an agent. I mean, if you could serve a real estate agent, they're always posting stuff like, hey, we have an open house. Like, what can I do to help you at your open house? Or, hey, we're having this event, like show up and say, hey, how can I help? And if you're serving, if you have like a servant mindset and you're not expecting anything in return, then they're probably going to use you for at least one inspection and kind of get you in the door.
So refreshing to hear that. I want to like underscore that, the servant mentality. And a lot of people, not just inspectors, entrepreneurs, we got to take the ego out of it, right? Because you got to take the ego out to say, hey, how can I help you? I'm going to give you value first. And that's like a consistent theme I've heard with lots of high growth companies, lots of high performing inspectors is they take the ego out and say, hey, how can I help?
Yeah. Like, and that's a rich dad, poor dad concept. He says, if I can serve more people by having an apartment complex with 30 doors, then I make more money because you're serving more people versus having one house. Mm-hmm. Same thing. MJ DeMarco says it's the law of, he doesn't really like the law of attraction because he's like, you can't just sit there and think good thoughts and things are going to happen right. for you. So he has something called the law of affection. The more people you affect, the more money you make. So we kind of have to, we need money, but don't think about money. It's kind of hard to do that, but think about how can I serve somebody or how can I help them? And then the law of affection and the law of reciprocity say that those things are going to come back to you.
Yeah. Yep. And that's the beauty of it is that, or the irony, I guess, of it is that it's not necessarily always going to feel like the most scalable thing to go to one realtor's event and help set stuff up, spend a few hours.
Right.
But I'm sure you have plenty of stories. Guess what? That realtor knows 10 other realtors and they may just say, hey, she was super helpful. Great guy. Boom. And that's it.
Yeah. And that's where you have to leverage relationships and go after don't be afraid to go after the big fish. Like I've always gone after the big fish. That's how I got my CTO. He's a pretty big fish and people are scared and they're hesitant to go after the people on the top. Like, oh, I'll just go after the agent who does 5 a year. But if you go after the top agent and you can work in a way that they like, or you have to be open to like, say, what do you want us to do? Like, how do you want us to do the inspection? Or what do you not like about what a home inspector does? And then you have to adjust, like they're a customer and you have to adjust your product to satisfy the customer. You're not going to do anything unethical, but you're going to, like, for instance, with a furnace being too old, I used to put that in red. Mm-hmm. And the agents and the sellers would say, well, is it broken? No. Then why'd you put it in red? Because now the buyer's asking for it to be replaced, but it's working just fine. So I thought, okay, what can we do? And so I came out with an orange colored text that still goes in the summary. And so now it lets them know, and it's in orange. So it says, keep an eye on it, make sure you service it more often, and you may have to replace it while you're living in the house. And then they stopped bugging me about it being in red. And then the next thing came along, hey, we don't like how you do this. Okay, what can we do to fix it? So go after the top agents and then ask them, hey, what did you like about what we did? What didn't you like? Do you have any feedback for me? And then don't be afraid to change, but still stay within your integrity and
Mhm.
all that. But you can't just say, this is how my report is, that's how I do it, deal with it, because you're not going to succeed and grow if you do that.
Amazing advice. And I think it's, I'm not stepping out of line saying, yeah, home inspectors can be hard headed sometimes and stubborn and stuck in their ways. And so I just love the curious mindset, though, of asking questions. I think anytime you're asking questions, you're learning. And that's not surprising given your history and everything you've done.
Right.
So great advice. Um, let's jump into Blipp, because I'm super fascinated by you grow this home inspection company in a couple of years, great growth, and then you cross over into the software, a different business and world. How did that come about?
So as my stories say, is that I've always been infatuated with automation and software and the leverage that you have where you can just turn something on and it can work for you even while you sleep.
Right.
The problem with home inspections is that once you finish the job, that customer is not going to move for another 7 to 8 years. And even if they use you, like that's a long time. So you're always fighting for business. The best thing to do is to find a recurring monthly revenue where you can, charge your customer multiple times. A home inspection, people have been trying to do that for years, trying to figure it out. So software, I just love. I love computers. I love leverage. I love technology. I love that it works 24 hours a day. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is that I found out going to home inspection conferences. I don't even know I went to one in the first place because there are people there. And I don't really like to be where people are. But I think what happened is that I got a free ticket to an InterNACHI conference in 2014. And so I went. It was in Vegas, so like the flight was super cheap because it's a like an hour flight. And so I decided to go. And there were a lot of vendors there that um, I'm like, wow, I didn't know this existed because my grandpa never went to conferences and I just didn't know about them.
Mhm.
Um, but then I also learned and met other home inspectors. So I was able to talk to them, and a lot of them, like if you talk to a home inspector, it's really surprising. It's like, why are you doing it that way? Like there's this way. And they're like, are you serious? I didn't know you could do it that way. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, can you show me how? And I'm like, yeah, it takes 5 minutes. Here's how you do it. Um, and so they're very home inspectors are very learning based. And so if you could help them with something to run their business, they eat it up. And so I I love being a teacher. I like teaching. I like to teach at church. I like to teach my kids things, just because of that light and that curiosity when someone's learning something new. Um, so I showed these inspectors how to do a follow up email with a Google link, or just show them how to do something that they weren't doing, and they just like a lot of the times they're like, that just changed my entire business, or that just saved me 2 hours a day, or so I kind of got addicted to helping inspectors by showing them kind of the software side and the website side of things that I was doing. And so I was at a meeting with inspectors, or about 30 of them in the room, and each of us would get up and kind of say, this is where we're at, this is what we're working on, this is what we need help with. And so I got up there and said, this is where I'm at. And I said, 35% of my business is from Google. And I kind of kept going. And one of the inspectors interrupted me and said, wait, you mean 3 to 5%, right? Not 35%. And I said, no, 35%. And he's had his business since, I think he's like 20 years, 22 years. So, and I was like, well, what are you guys doing? Like, isn't that typical, 35%? And they're like, no, like nobody does that. So they went around the room and it was all like under 5%, if anything at all, from
Right.
online. And that kind of, I was, it's like reverse of what I was doing. I was like, I don't understand how you guys don't get business online. And usually we have like 30 to 45 minutes to speak. And so I was about an hour in when I said that. We were supposed to eat dinner. And so I think I went for another hour just telling them everything about websites, and they didn't know what, like, the difference between traffic and conversion. They didn't know anything about lead generation. They didn't know what a sticky menu was. Just they just didn't know any of that. And so they finally said we need to go eat. And so they got their food and came back, and I spent another 2 hours talking about technology and software that I was using to make things easier. And so, I had 45 minutes and I spoke for 4 hours. And they were just like writing furiously, and some of them, their eyes were glazing over. And several times I'd say something that was very common in like internet marketing, and they're like, wait, what was that you just said? And I'm like, this is crazy. You guys don't know this stuff. But inspectors are technicians.
Right.
They're engineers. So they don't know software and technology. So I like opened up my eyes to what they don't know,
Hmm.
and that they've been doing it for 20 years. And I'm like, you know how much time you could have saved in 20 years if you would have just done this one thing?
Right.
And so they're kind of mad because they're like, really, that's all I have to do? Um, so yeah, I did that. And then the next meeting, I had the same thing. I'm like, well, if they don't know about these things, I wonder if they know about these. So I kind of talked about some other softwares like Gravity Forms that you can create forms on your web page. And they're like, well, what do you use that for? And I'm like, well, my inspectors have a checklist at the end of the inspection. They open up the app that is the web page, and then they're like, wait, what is an app that's a web page? And I'm like, oh my gosh, like you save it as an app on your phone. And they're like, so it's an app? And I'm like, well, no, it's not a web page. And they're like, I didn't know about that. And so then I had to teach them about that. But I'm like, my inspectors have a checklist that says, are the lights off? And they have to tap with their finger a check mark. Is the thermostat returned to what it was? Is the door locked? Do you have your tools? Did you ask the client for payment? And so the inspector just opens the app, checks those off, hits submit, and it sends me an email with what they filled. And then with payment, they can upload the check, so we can put the check number and mark it paid. If they need more tools or materials, I have a tools and material requisition form that they can. I need more batteries. How many do you have left? When do you need them by? So I probably use 32 or 40 forms with Gravity Forms. And so I probably spend an hour and a half just on Gravity Forms and
Mhm.
what you can do with it. Um, so one of those times I mentioned, they said, well, how are you getting all your reviews? And I said, well, I just set up a link in ISN, which is Inspection Support Network. So an email template and a text template that said, please take 30 seconds to leave me some feedback. It had a link. With my follow-up calls, I was probably converting a client to a review maybe 15 to 20% of the time, which is really good. Usually it's 3 to 7%.
Right.
And so they said, can you send me the templates? So I sent them the templates, told them what to do. And then the next meeting, 3 months later, I got up and I said, how many of you did that? And none of them did.
Yep.
And I'm like, come on, guys. And they said, well, they just had excuses why they didn't do it.
There's always a reason. Always
Yeah.
reasons to not do it.
So then somebody said, I can't remember who it was, but they said, well can you automate it? And can we, they wanted more. They just didn't want, they're like, well, I have to go to Yelp to look at my reviews. Got to go to Facebook. And they're like, I want to be able, is there a way to see the reviews all in one place? And there were other review software companies in the industry. But that you had to like open up the app and then manually enter the client's info. One of them, it was like you enter the client's info, the client gets the link, they open it, then they have to put their info in. I'm like, you're doing double entry. Like, why do they have? And then they had to leave the review. And then it didn't end up going anywhere, because before Google and Facebook reviews, it used to be a thing to just put it on the website. They would just
Mhm.
host it on the website.
Mhm.
So those companies didn't, when reviews came out on Google and Facebook, they didn't innovate and make that an option. So there just wasn't a lot of, um, they just weren't innovating and weren't advanced, and they weren't doing text. So someone said, well, can you automate it and connect it to ISN? I knew ISN had an API that people could connect to and integrate with. So I went home and I knew WordPress. I don't know how to code. So with WordPress, I um, built it in a way that I was actually hacking modal pop-ups to make it fast, because a pop-up doesn't have to reload. And I knew that it had to be fast, because if it had to reload, you might lose that person. They might not leave a review.
Right.
But if they push the back button, it would ruin everything, because they were on the same web page the entire time. It was just, it would pop up a pop-up, and then they click something else and it would be a pop-up over that pop-up. So I kind of hacked it to make it work. And then 3 months later, I said, I'm done. And they're like, what the heck? Like, we asked you to build that. We didn't know you'd do it in 3 months. But I was literally working from 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. trying to figure it out. And my neighbor's a software guy, so I'd text him when I'd run into trouble.
Mhm.
So like the text wouldn't work. And I'm like, hey, Ben, why is this not working? And he's like, well, mobile doesn't recognize the pound sign in the code, so try it this way. So then I changed it and it'd work. So I'd ask him a couple of questions. Um, so I had all 30 people sign up at $120 a month, um, like in 3 days. The problem was is that I had to custom make the page, um, add their logo to it, add all the links to it. So it took me about an hour or 2 hours to create each page.
Mhm.
And so it took me a long time. And then Ben finally asked, like, what are you doing? Like, you're asking me all these questions. What are you doing? And I said, I've got these inspectors. They want me to help them get more reviews. I created this thing with WordPress. And he's like, wait, how did you do that? I'm like, I just hacked a pop-up plugin. And he's like, that's like ridiculous. He's like, I don't even know how that works. Like, how is that working? Like, I don't know, but it's working. And I'm like, how many? And then I had like another 20 people sign up for it, because it was working really well. Like the conversion rates were like 30 to 50%, compared to most people with ISN. They don't follow up, so they were getting like a less than 10%, and then it was jumping to 30 to 50%. So they were like telling other inspectors about it. More inspectors were signing up, and I was just swamped making these pages. And so I said, Ben, how long is this going to last before it like falls apart? And he's like, I don't even know how it's not falling apart right now. Because if you think about all the emails and texts that are going out, the number of people that are going on there, the traffic, I started having like JavaScript errors for reasons I don't know. And when I had to fix something, I had to fix it, or update something, I had to fix it across all users' pages.
Ooh.
So I remember I had a couple of things that broke, and I had to go through 60 different pages and fix it. And it took me like half a day or the entire day. So he's like, you're insane. And then he's retired. So he was a part of the scan team. Um, that was a QR scanning app
Mhm.
that went on Shark Tank. And they sold to Snapchat in 2014, I think, for $54 million. So he was a part of that founder team. And he was just doing a couple projects that were freemium software.
Mhm.
So I don't think he was being paid anything. So his wife was like, probably overheard him like talking to me, talking stuff through with me over the phone or something. Or she's like, who are you texting? And she's like, our neighbor has created this like messy app with WordPress. It's not even really an app. And he's making $5,000 a month. And his wife was like, what? Like, why are we doing these other things? If he's asking for help, like he's actually making money, help him. And so he's like, okay. So um, he partnered with me and started building the version that it is now. It took him, I think, 4 or 5 months of just coding
Mhm.
all day. And it's funny because I have no idea like about software. And so I'm like, how many lines of code have you written, Ben? Like 20,000? And he's like, are you serious right now? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, this is like 350,000 lines and it's not even done yet. And it doesn't even have this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like that's a
Complex.
lot. That's a lot.
Yep.
Because I mess with CSS and HTML just on a web page. And CSS, if you wanted to move a button or something, it's like 2 lines or one. And he's got 350,000. I'm like, oh my gosh. So he did that. We launched it in his version February of 2018. So we're coming up on 2 years. And once he did that, we actually, I went to Inspection World in Orlando in January before he had finished it. And I had him send me screenshots of the software and I was demoing it as if it were actually working. So I'm like, yeah, this is what the client sees. So I screenshotted pictures of the review site options and I would just swipe. And I'm like, and then when they click this, this happens. So it didn't even work. And we sold probably 38 at Inspection World. And we didn't even have anything, like they didn't even have a sign up page. So I had to have them fill it out on a card with their credit card information. And then I just had them sitting until Ben was ready to launch it. So it was kind of crazy because he's like, wait, you're going to this conference. We don't even have anything yet. And I'm like, I'll figure it out. I'll, I'll just have him fill it out and I'll tell him it'll be ready in a month.
True entrepreneur fashion doing the pre-sales. Like that was my brother and I, quick tangent, listened to a podcast called Startups for the Rest of Us when we were building Spectora and kind of going through the journey. And they were so big on like, hey, can you prove it out by pre-selling? If you can
Right.
pre-sell and get even 10 people's credit card numbers, you have something. So that's amazing. That's so cool that you did that.
Yeah. And it was nice because as a home inspector, like it's weird because, home inspectors are like come up and their arms are crossed and they're like, what is this? And I'm like, how should you get reviews? And they're like, I don't need reviews. And I have to like explain to them why they're important. But then I'd say, yeah, I'm a home inspector. I've got 4 inspectors. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're a home inspector? And then we get
Yeah.
all relaxed. And then they're like, oh, okay, tell me about it. It's just, it's crazy because they're like, if you speak their language or you've been through what they've been through, because usually they're like, vendors don't know what we do.
Right.
They don't know what we want. They don't know how we want things. So if you can like stand next to your customer and look at something together instead of you sitting across from a table, things change drastically. So I said, yeah, I'm a home inspector. This is my business. This is how many reviews I have. This is how much business I get from my reviews. And that made it a whole lot easier to talk to them and to get them to buy into it. Um, and then from there, I mean, a lot of software companies or companies in general, they think that they know what the customer wants. And they kind of use a blanket statement or they use or a blanket feature or a number that, well, if this many people want it, then we'll do it. And Ben probably hates me because I'll say, hey, Ben, can we do this? And he's like, well, who wants that? And I'm like, just someone asked me. And he's like, one person? I'm like, yeah, but I think other people would use it too. And then he does it reluctantly. And then everybody's like, this is amazing. So you have to kind of, it's hard. I think with anything we think we know what the customer wants, or we kind of hold back because we don't want to invest the time in something. But when you're the customer and you know what the customer wants, um, it's easy for you to kind of project that out and say, well, is someone else going to want this? And is this going to benefit? Is this, are we going off mission here?
Right.
Um, like a home inspector doing something weird, like becoming a real estate agent is probably not a good idea, but like entertain it, be curious about it. Say, why do you want that? How will this help you? Um, and I think that treating your customers as an individual and saying, okay, what is it that you need is going to help you a lot. Because if you can help that one person, they're going to tell everybody about it. Like we've had people say, hey, can you add this review site option? Like we have random people signing up like attorneys and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, let me work on adding that review site. And then I tell Ben, hey, add this, and he adds it. And then like 2 hours later, I'm like, all right, it's done. And then they're like, whoa, like that's amazing.
Huge.
Then they tell everybody. Or somebody else says, hey, can it do this? I'm like, let me see. And I ask Ben, he's like, yeah, I can do that right now. And I'm like, okay, it's done. Like, this the level of customer service the perceived customer service and the customer service, they're just like blown away. And I don't think we have any real angry users where we said, no, we're not going to do that. I mean, we might have one that had like a crazy idea, but
Yeah.
I'll think about it and say, can other people benefit from this? Is it something that's going to work for everybody, or and then we'll do it.
So you guys have attorneys, lawyers, plumbers, so that you have other people that utilize Blipp?
Yeah, so inspectors know everybody, so it's kind of a nice place to start.
Mm-hmm.
So they would, a lot of times inspectors would do an inspection. The client gets the text, and if the client's an HVAC tech or a plumber or a real estate agent, then they say, hey, what software is this that you're using? And then they tell them, and then they come to our website, get a free demo, sign up. So we have a couple of weird, we have like a lady that does like spiritual healing or
Mm-hmm.
something, like Reiki and stuff, that uses it. We've got an upholstery company or carpet company in Iowa that uses it. We've got some window cleaners that cleaned my house.
Mm-hmm.
While they were cleaning my house, I set up an account for them. And then when they were done, I said, hey, come check this out. And I'm like, download the app, send it. And then they started using it.
Very cool.
So we have a lot of weird, the problem with it is that you have to do it manually unless you have a software to integrate it with.
Right.
Nobody wants to do anything manually, or they forget.
Right.
So a lot of agents that we've signed up, they do so little volume and they have to pull out their phone and remember to send it after closing. So they just end up canceling.
Right.
But if you can streamline it and integrate it and automate it, then they don't even think about it. I've had people who have used the software for 2 years, and then they come in the chat and they're like, hey, I don't know what my password is. And then they're like, to be honest, I've never logged in. So, because they were just, seeing the reviews come in, we send them an email when they get one.
Yeah.
And they'd never logged into their dashboard. And so if you can automate it, they don't have to do anything. They see the reviews coming in. That's the best way to do it, which is why we're trying to figure out how can we integrate with other softwares, other scheduling softwares in other industries and that kind of thing.
Very cool. Yeah. And our integration will be coming soon. I can say that at this point. By the time we publish this, it'll be either in beta or out. And I'm super excited about it because we have tons of users asking for it. Yeah. If you want to just give a quick why anyone that hasn't used Blipp or heard of it, that's a Spectora user, like how will this help them?
Yeah. The thing about, Spectora is it was really refreshing when you guys came out because, again, I appreciate streamlined, looks good, is simple, not complicated. Because, again, a lot of people pretty something up for their own ego, like you said. But when you go to use it, you're like, man, this is terrible. It's clunky. It takes too long. It's hard. It's not convenient. So you guys are all those things: fast, convenient, looks great, easy to navigate the report. So I was really excited when you guys came out with your software. And so at events, you guys started gaining traction. People would come to our booth and say, hey, because we'd say, oh, we integrate with ISN and Horizon. And they said, you integrate with Spectora. And I'm like, no, but, and this is probably part of it, is I was like, go bug them about it.
That's how it works. That's how integrations in our industry work.
I'm like, no, not yet, but go bug them and say,
Customer demand.
you want the integration. And then the more people we have, then it's like, if you bug someone long enough, they'll just do it just so they can be left alone.
Yeah.
So I'm like, go bug it. And we got to the point where we're at like 30 or 50 users that currently use it that are sending them manually, which they're very diligent because I look at and they're sending after every inspection. So they've got their process.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they keep asking like, I'm tired of doing this, or they forget, or they kind of start to get lazy. And they're like, if this could be automated, that'd be amazing. I'm like, tell the Wagstaff brothers.
Love it.
That you want it. And then we have people come to the booth that say, well, we'll sign up once it's integrated. And I'm like, well, sign up now and send them manually. And they're like, no, we'll just do it when it's automatic because I'm not going to do it. And I'm like, so we probably have another 50 or 60 that have come up to us and they said, I don't want to sign up now, but once it's done. So we've got 100 people at least that use Spectora that want this integration done. So they'll be excited when we announce it.
Heck yeah. I'm always pounding the table and doing videos and talks and articles on the importance of local reviews and SEO. And you're obviously an expert in this field. Can you speak a little to how getting another 50, 100 Google reviews and then reviews in other places can literally transform your business into kind of what you saw in your early days of 35+% coming in while you're sleeping, while you're
Yeah.
with your family?
Yeah. So, it's crazy that the consumer, when they see that you have the most reviews, I don't know if people understand how important reviews are. And I'm not going to say that people are like me. Like, I base all my decisions off of reviews
Same
for
here.
everything.
Yep.
Like this microphone, looked at reviews. What's the best podcasting microphone?
Yep.
My computer, my camera that I'm on, like everything. Um, and if you go to Amazon, there's a reason why all the products have reviews. And if there's a TV that has 5,000 reviews and it's a 4.5 star versus one that has 100 reviews and it's a 3 star, you're going to buy the TV with the most reviews and the higher rating.
Exactly.
So people do that. I think they say that the average person spends 13 minutes looking at reviews before they
Mm-hmm.
go to a company's website even. And that's important because the first thing they do after they read your reviews, if they're satisfied with what the reviews say, the first thing they do is go to your website. So if your website doesn't have a call to action or an easy flow, you're going to lose them. So as far as the number of reviews go, once you need to be like if somebody has 70 and you're trying to pass them up, you probably need to have like 110 or 120 in order for you to get like steal away what they're taking.
Yep.
I think that the map pack, they said that the first spot gets 35% of the clicks, the second one gets 14, the third gets 7, and then obviously all the others you can do the math and know that they don't get many clicks. So you
Right.
want that top spot for that 35% of clicks, and to get there you need to have a sizable amount above the next person. And if you have a lot, like right now, I think the next person below us probably has 220 reviews, and we probably have like 960. So at that point, people are just like, there's not like, why are you even thinking
Contest.
about this?
Yeah.
They're not even going to look at the other person's reviews.
No.
Whereas if I had 250 and they had 220, they'd probably look at their reviews too. But if you have way more, they're not even going to look at them.
Yeah. It's overwhelming.
Yeah. So it's kind of unfair. But again, you have all these people that say reviews don't matter. They matter.
And from a realtor perspective, because for those that don't know, I was a realtor for 5 years. Even when I recommended a home inspector, my buyers would still go and research it. I asked them. So they still went and looked at reviews. So keep in mind, you can have all the best agent relationships you want. The modern consumer, I think, and millennials especially, still go and look at reviews.
Yeah. And I think it's something like 85 or 90% trust a review as much as a personal recommendation.
Exactly.
So, and you do have that segment of people that, their agent tells them and then they listen.
Mm-hmm.
But most people are just going to either go and look up the person that the agent recommended, or there are articles online that Angie's List has put out and other real estate companies that say, don't trust the recommendation that your agent gave you, find your own.
Right.
So they may have read that, so they're going to find their own.
Yeah.
So they're either going to look up your reviews if you're recommended by the agent, and if they're terrible, they're going to find somebody else, or they're going to say, I'm not going with my agent's recommendation, I'm going to find somebody else.
Right.
And I had somebody do that. They called me and said, yeah, I found you on Google. My agent recommended this other inspector. And they started listing off like, the agent said that they do this. Do you do that? I said, yes. Do you do this? The agent said they do this. Do you do that? Yes. Do you do this? Yes. I'm like, what was the name of the company? And then he's like, it's like Onsite Home Inspections or something. I'm like, that's me.
They found you twice.
Yeah. So the agent recommended me, but then they didn't trust. And so they looked up, found Onsite Home Inspections, called, and it ended up being the same recommendation. So
That's winning.
yeah. So it was kind of funny.
What would you say to the inspector that says, well, I'm kind of nervous about it because what if I get a bad review? That's the common objection. Is it a numbers game and a volume game where you just got to ask everybody if you do good business and you have confidence in your product?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, if you have a good experience somewhere, you're not going to leave a review. It's usually the bad experiences
Right.
that take the time to leave a review. But the numbers say that 70% of consumers will leave your review if you ask them.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to ask everybody, because if you look at a home inspector, any business has negative reviews, and you look at the months that they are apart, they're probably spread out pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
That probably tells you that they're not asking everybody. They're just having those people that have bad experiences post once every 6 months.
Right.
And so it looks really bad for the business, but those reviews are spread out over time, and they're not asking the people who had a good experience. So it's really detrimental to the business and doesn't really give the consumer a correct idea of what the business experience is like.
Yep.
So it's very important to ask everybody, and people are scared of getting a bad review. I get bad reviews. I remember the first time I got a bad review, I was sick for like 3 days, and my wife couldn't sleep, and we were just like, oh my gosh, like I was devastated. I
Yeah.
literally couldn't sleep. And then I got a second, and it was kind of the same feeling, but a little less. And then by the third and fourth, I'm just like, whatever, I'll just get more good reviews, and I didn't worry about it
The
anymore.
numbers game. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's important though to read the bad review, because is it something that you actually did? Is it a perception of the customer that was incorrect? Like, listen to your customers. Don't just say this person's crazy, which some of them are, but don't just blanket statement this person's crazy, because there might be something that you could fix. Like if somebody says, I didn't get my termite report. Okay, well, we send that separate from the inspection report. Is there a way we can automate that, or what system can we put in place to remember that? Or it might be they missed this, and then it's on page 17, and maybe you didn't have a picture of it. So can you say like, well, we need to start taking pictures of this, or we need to make the report easier to read, or we need to make sure to remind them to read their entire report? Like, don't always put it on them. Ask yourself, is there something I can do better to make this not come up again? Because people tend to avoid, and it builds up until when you're at the point where you have so many, like in 4 disciplines of execution, they call it the whirlwind. You have all these things that don't really matter, um, like bugging you or taking up your time. It's not that they don't matter, but it's just taking up your time. And if you address them as they come, say, can we do something better to avoid this in the future? Or how can we make this easier? How can we eliminate this phone call into the office with an automated text reminder? Then you're actually becoming more efficient, instead of just piling up this mess as you grow business. Because as you scale, that's going to get messy quick.
Yeah.
So I did a presentation on office efficiency, and I came up with a metric of calls per inspection, inbound calls per inspection, which means how many inbound calls need to be done per inspection that you're performing.
Mm-hmm.
And so our number was two phone calls. There was a company that had 30 per
Yikes.
inspection. So if we had 400 calls, we did 150 inspections. I think it was 300, and we did 150 inspections. Mm-hmm. They did 150 inspections, but they had like 4,000 phone calls that month. And I'm like, what are people calling you for? And so I told them, make a list, like, keep track. If someone calls in, it's the inspector asking where the client is. Okay, how do we eliminate that phone call? Inspector calls in, says, I can't find the lockbox. Okay, how do we eliminate that phone call? Client calls and says, where's the inspector? How do we eliminate that phone call?
Yeah.
They show up for the walkthrough. Client calls and says, what time's the walkthrough time again? I can't remember. How do we eliminate that? So if you keep track of those and then create something automated, like let's send a text reminder to the client, this is your walkthrough time, an hour before the inspection.
Done.
No more phone call. If we ask the seller's agent or the buyer, or if we call the seller's agent to confirm the inspection, ask them where the lockbox is, and then have a note in the software that we say the lockbox is on the gas meter, we send a text to the inspector with all the job information 2 hours before the job. It's right there. They're not going to call you. They're going to walk right up to it. They're not going to spend 10 minutes looking around for it, wasting time either.
Efficiency.
So yeah, there's so many like inefficiencies that people just keep doing, and they don't think about how can we do this better or quicker. And so that saves a lot of time. I don't remember the original question, but
hey, we went off on an efficiency tangent. It's good. You're good for the industry. It gets people thinking about it. Reviews.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah, asking. You brought up such a great point of by asking for reviews every time. And I think this is part of the reason why some inspectors are scared to do it, because it holds them fully accountable. It makes them almost exposed on things they're maybe not doing well, but in the end, it makes you better because you can
Yeah.
fix
So,
those things.
so that's where we were at, is if you get a bad review and you want to look at it and
Yeah,
want to classify it and say, is this something that was in the report and they just missed it? Is it something that I missed? I need to call them. Um, but customer feedback is like important,
everything. Yeah, it's
because if you're doing a crappy job, your customers might not tell you. And if they do, you should appreciate that, because you could probably do it better. I remember I got a bad review from somebody. I can't remember why, but it was a 1 star. And so I called her up and I said, um, I remember her name, and I'm like, Natalie, I just wanted to, I'm the owner of Onsite Home Inspections. I saw your 1 star review, and I just wanted to thank you so much for leaving us a 1 star review. And she like was like shocked, and she's like, you want to thank me? And I'm like, yeah, I just appreciate that you went on there and gave us a 1 star review, because that lets me know that maybe we can do something better. And so I kind of wanted to get your take on what happened and kind of tell me what was going on, and maybe we can figure out how we can do that better. And she spent like 10 minutes talking about it. Um and it was just at the end, she's like, well, thank you so much for listening to me, and I'll take that review off and blah blah. And it was that she was, I'm remembering now, she was a veteran, and she had to get a termite inspection, and she had paid for an inspection with a termite inspection, and she had to get a second inspection. She was asking for a free termite,
mhm,
since we didn't send her the certificate for her loan. And my office manager said no. And so she was upset about that. And so her review said, they just want more money. They don't care.
right.
And I'm a single mom. And she kind of had this whole story. And so I called her and said, yeah, I'm going to let my office manager know that, we really appreciate our veterans, and we want to make sure that you're taken care of. And so I said, I went ahead and refunded your inspection fee, entire inspection fee. I don't even think I told her. I just refunded it,
Mhm.
which I like to do that. And that's another thing, is that if you have a bad experience, like, refund their money and don't tell them about it, because they'll see it and they'll be like, whoa. So I didn't tell her I was going to refund her money. Um, but I will gladly pay $400 for somebody to tell me how my business can be better, instead of just like not calling her, accepting the 1 star review, and then not doing anything about it.
Yeah. What a refreshing perspective. I think that right there is how everyone should look at customer feedback.
But yeah, customer, like, think of the customer as you. Just like, how like, did we mess up? Could we have done better? Just one other quick story is that this guy left us a bad review and said they don't even have ladders. They don't even check the roof. They don't even have ladders. And I have an extending climb ladder that fits in the trunk of my Camry. And so, when they get there at the end, they don't see a ladder. And so, and then it was raining that day, so I didn't get up on the roof, but I did get in the attic. Um, so he said, these inspectors are not prepared. They don't even carry ladders with them. They didn't even check the roof. And so I kind of got in a fight with him. This is kind of early, before I learned not to fight with customers. But I'm like, okay, logically, I have a picture of your attic, because we take a picture of every attic. And I said, I have a picture of your attic. And I was like doing the math and laying it all out. I'm like, your ceilings are 8 feet tall. And have a picture of your attic. So how do you think I got in there? I have a ladder. It's in my car. So I like logically proved that I have a ladder. And then his wife got on and left another 1 star review saying, calling your customer a liar is not a good way to do business. And I'm like, crap, that didn't make it better.
Right.
So I kept going in this back and forth, and I'm like, well, it's pouring rain. Like, I'm not going to get on the roof. I'm going to slip and fall and die. And he's like arguing and logically trying to talk your way out of something, out of someone being angry, just doesn't work.
Doesn't. It doesn't.
So we literally exchanged these angry emails back and forth, to the point where I finally gave up. And I'm like, I'm not going to get him to take these down. I might as well ask him, like, okay, well, if you were me, what would you have done? And so I asked him, and I said, you know, I couldn't get on the roof. If you were me, like, what would you have done? It was raining, and this is customer gold right here. He says, well, I would have offered to my customer to come out for free to check the roof when it was no longer raining and if it was safe to inspect the roof. And I'm like, holy crap, that's a really good idea. So I told him that. I was like, wow, that's a really good idea. I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to start doing that. And so, instead of just taking the money and saying, well, sorry, we couldn't inspect it. So, every year we have snow and we can't get up on the roof. So at the end of the walkthrough, we say, I wasn't able to inspect the roof because of the snow. Call our office when when the snow's melted and when it's dry and safe for us to go on it, and we'll check it out because we know how important the roof is, and we'll do it at no cost to you. And maybe 10% of people actually take us up on that. So it's not like, people say like, oh, we can't be going back to 100 houses a month, but we go back to way less than that. But just that you offered it and people are like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And instead of just marking on the report saying you didn't inspect it and then not saying anything about it, we make sure to say that at the end. And it's been literally customer service gold to say that at the end. And people are like, that's amazing. Like, you won't charge me to come back out? And I'm like, nope. Just let us know when it's dry.
That's
And
amazing.
do that.
That's such a cool story. And some people may take from this, oh, you have 900 or whatever reviews just because you asked. No, like these are the reasons, and you probably have 10 other things that you guys do that are just wow, like customer experiences.
Yeah, I mean, spend 30 to 60 minutes to make somebody happy for free. Then you have a story. You might have a policy like that you can then introduce, and it's just amazing customer service. But like, I did an example or an inspection for an agent that was a top agent. The appraiser said there's a water leak in the living room and it needs to be repaired. So the agent calls me and says, hey, was that wet? And I said, no. And he says, and I'm like, in the report, it was dry. We ran the shower above it.
Mhm.
And he's like, okay, well, this appraiser, this underwriter is asking for verification that it's not wet. And we're supposed to close on the house and they're not letting us close on it. So I said, let me go back out there and I'll take a picture with my moisture meter and an infrared camera, and I'll write up a report and I'll send it to you. And he's like, okay, send me the bill. I'm like, okay. So I drive out there. It's 22 minutes away ish, vacant house. I go in, put my moisture meter on the ceiling, take a picture, take 2 pictures with my infrared camera and leave. So, less than 45 minutes. Then I come home and write up a custom letter that says, an inspection was performed on the property address here. The ceiling in question was checked with a moisture meter and infrared camera, and it was dry. And I sent that to him, and he sent it to underwriter, and they approved it, and they closed like the next week. And so the underwriter was saying it needs to be fixed, the wall needs to, or the ceiling needs to be cut out, and all this stuff. And so now we do what we call appraisal verification inspections, where we
Mhm.
go out and take more pictures, and then we write up an underwriter letter that's all official and has our signature at the bottom whenever they ask us to do something like that. And now that agent tells that story all the time at the office. Like, I go over to, and he's like, oh my gosh, this is the inspector that I was telling you guys about with the underwriter letter and we couldn't close. And he went out there, and then he's like, you never sent me the bill. And I'm like, yeah, I just did it for free because your client paid for the inspection anyways. And now he tells everybody about that. And
Wow.
it's like, don't say like, I'm not going out there unless you pay me $200, because like that could make you more than $200 just doing
And it
something.
clearly has,
And it has, and it
yeah,
has.
clearly has. And that's the risk that most people don't take, because you're giving value first and you're doing it selflessly and without
Yeah, and you have to think. People think ROI, like, you can't calculate what your ROI is on that, because
right.
they could tell an agent that does even more business than them, and then you get all their business. Like, it's
Yeah.
people just see like, oh, I'm spending an hour and I'm making $0, but you can't think of it that way. It's not always cut and dry like that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the books we referenced and probably hundreds more try to ingrain that in our heads of like, think of the value you provide, the people you're affecting, kind of the way you put it.
Yeah, and the Thank You Economy is an awesome book as well for customer service by Gary Vaynerchuk, and he talks about how someone came in and they had an expired coupon to buy a bottle of wine, and I can't remember how much money off on the bottle of wine it was, but it was expired. And I can't remember if it was the manager or if it was his dad that said like, no, we're not honoring it. It's expired. And the customer like walked out and was like, I'm never coming back. But he said if they would have just gave him the $20 off or whatever it was, that customer would have been like amazed that they honored an expired coupon. They would have told everybody and they would have gotten a lot more business. But they just said, no, it's expired. And the customer left angry.
Yeah. Yeah. We could probably find hundreds of examples. Um, Man, we've been through a ton. I want to respect your time. We got about 5-10 minutes here, but let's close with uh, two questions, and I'll ask you a third one of anything I missed. But the first one, let's just for entrepreneurs in general, because I know our big first segment was kind of just the entrepreneurial journey. What advice or themes would you impart on anyone that is just like you, not just like you in terms of circumstances, but has that burning desire to just start something, but don't have the opportunity yet or don't know where to go? What would you tell them?
I think a lot can be said of just doing something. Um, and I know, everybody's behavior is different. Some people have to plan stuff out perfectly before they are comfortable with taking action. I do that sometimes where, I buy all the equipment and then I don't do anything with it for 2 years. And because I say, well, I don't have the tools to do it. And then I buy all the tools and then I still don't do it. Like there's so many things that I'm like, if I just buy a treadmill, then I'll use the treadmill. If you could pan over to my treadmill, I've maybe used it twice
All
in 3
right.
years. But we all get caught up on tools, okay? And then the second thing is like, if I just knew how, if I had the strategy of how to do it, if someone just told me the exact steps of how to do it, like people do that. They're like, eat it. If you want to lose weight, this is what you eat. But still, we don't do it. So it's like we've given you the tools, we've told you how to do it, but you still don't do it. And it goes back to the why. It's like you're not sufficiently motivated to do it. And I'll tell a brief story about that. Is that I haven't worked out since high school, and I got to the point that my boys are now 7 and 5, and then I have a daughter that's 3, and they'll fall asleep on the couch or whatever. I got to take them to their bed, and oh my gosh, like they're getting heavy. And so I was like, I'm getting winded taking them down the stairs, and then we're starting to play catch in the backyard or starting to play basketball with them. And I'm just like, just out of breath after like 5 minutes. So, you could say, I'm going to go to the gym. Why do you want to go to the gym? Because I want to look hot or I want to look toned or whatever. It's not good enough. It wasn't until I'm like, my boys are missing out on experiences with me because I'm out of shape that finally kicked me into gear. And you also have to get like, kind of get some accountability, and so I hired a trainer who I pay, and he expects me to be there. And so that works for me because I'm not going to let somebody just sit there, and I'm not going to be late. And if I'm paying somebody, then I'm going to actually do it because I'm investing money into it.
Yep.
But if I were to I bought a gym membership, at Gold's Gym. It's a 2-year contract, went once, spent all this money, but no one expected me to be there,
Right.
and it wasn't enough money. So you have to create some forced accountability. And I've been doing this for a little over a year, working out with my trainer, and I haven't missed a day because I've set it up to where I have my why I'm doing it. I want to be in shape so I can, spend time with my boys. We went to Disneyland and I literally had to carry them around. This was after I started working out, and I wasn't out of breath. I was able to carry them around. They were falling asleep. And I was like, this is really nice to not be winded just carrying them 5 feet.
Yep.
So you have to have a reason, something that, like I said, wakes you up, or something that's going to get you to the gym, something that motivates you, that's like a higher purpose, or, and that's what people need. They don't need tools and the how to, they need a compelling reason why. Why would I do that? And so if anybody wants to do anything, you need to start with that why, because you have a little bit of why probably because you're thinking about it. You're thinking, I need to do this thing. So sit down and stop and think about why, like what made you want to start to do that thing. And if you don't have a good enough reason, you need to figure one out, because times are going to be hard. You're going to want to give up. You're going to have obstacles. You're going to have people ask you to do things you don't want to. you're going to have to do things you don't want to. And if it's not strong enough, you're just going to say, all right, I'm not going to do it. I don't, I don't have a compelling enough reason why. But I would not stand in front of agents or talk to people, or there's so many things that I've done outside of my comfort zone that I wouldn't normally do if I didn't have that in the back of my head. This is why I'm doing it, and this is what's driving me. And I'm fine with being uncomfortable for an hour or two or more to be able to be comfortable in 5 or 10 years. And so that's kind of what I would say to those people is to find out what your why is and just start doing something. Even if it's preparing, like getting more knowledge about the thing that you want to do. Whatever it is that you want to do. If you want to become a cook or do a cooking YouTube channel, start buying recipe books, start figuring out, like, just do something to where when the opportunity presents itself, then you can do it. Or start failing. Like, if you look at a lot of famous people that have done videos or something like that, they're really, if you look at the first ones they did are terrible,
Yeah.
like low quality. They're stuttering. But they just kept doing it. And Gary Vaynerchuk says this. He's like, I will take every single interview because it gives me experience. I don't care if only 60 people watched it,
Yeah.
because he's learning. And if he does that all the time, then he gets good at it. He hears the same questions, he knows his answers, and now he's a really good speaker because he's just done it so much.
Yeah. And I heard it in a book recently, objects in like the simplest form, objects in motion tend to stay in motion. And it's
Right.
like you start moving, you'll keep moving, you'll keep
Yep.
moving. Wonderful advice. So now let's go inspector specific. For let's you can tailor this how you can take this question however you want. Just advice for any inspectors that are listening, and you can go brand new inspector, mid-career inspector, multis. Because I think you have wisdom to impart on all of them, but I'll let you run with it.
Yeah. So I think with individual inspectors, I got caught up so much in the technical side of things. And I mean, you need to do a good home inspection. You don't have to do a perfect home inspection. And there are inspectors that just heard that and they're like cringing. Um, but if you think about McDonald's is a multi-billion-dollar company, they make a nasty hamburger. But if you go to the drive-through, it's packed. And Five Guys, which is a way better hamburger, is not as packed as McDonald's, because
Right.
McDonald's is efficient, convenient, and we would rather have the convenience and efficiency of going to McDonald's for a lower quality burger than we would than to buy our own beef and cook it at home.
Right.
So take that into home inspections. Now, you can't just kind of willy-nilly have this terrible report. I mean, there's obviously a balance there, but you don't have to like go into every single detail, or this could possibly happen because, yeah, someone could possibly slip on that linoleum floor tomorrow, but that doesn't mean they're replacing it with carpet. Like, don't go into so much
Infinite.
detail
Yeah.
where you're
Infinite what ifs.
saying, what if, like, well, this fence has sharp points on the top of it, and if somebody fell in the right way, then they're going to get impaled. So I'm going to tell them to replace the fence. Like, don't read into it so much, but also, make sure you're providing value and you're doing what you should, and you're not just like, I've seen some reports that's like all white space and everything's in black text and there's no pictures or there's two pictures. So like, provide a good report, but don't go like, don't your people are creating reports that should be charging $3,000 for because of the level of detail, but the market cannot sustain that level of detail at the price that they're willing to pay.
Right.
Like, if people were willing to pay $3,000 for an exhaustive report like that, then we'd be doing it more. They're not willing to pay that. They're willing to pay for a good report for $300 or $400 or $500, and they're not willing to pay $100 for a crappy report. So you have to kind of, the market, it will tell you what works. But we have we have a lot of inspectors that do one inspection. It takes them 8 hours and they charge $400. It's mind-boggling to me.
Got to get more efficient as an industry, and that's the only way guys can survive, make a good living, prices
Yeah,
can go up.
and it's hard because inspectors want to be perfect. They want to be thorough, and but the main thing you want to do is just not miss the major stuff. But you don't have to go into the minute level of detail that a lot of inspectors do go into. And like I said, that's going to make a lot of inspectors cringe. But like, take a look at your comments and are you doing something that you shouldn't be doing and being more efficient? So yeah, for new inspectors, I'd say don't get so much into the technical, like know what you're talking about, but don't. I know a lot of people spend a lot of time, like 80% of their time, just trying to figure out how to do a better inspection or be more technical. But really, they should be spending 20% of time trying to figure out being technical and 80% time trying to be more efficient or have, a better process or more convenient for the customer.
I couldn't echo that more, just based on all the conversations I have and the inspectors the ones that I hear that are constantly growing and succeeding, they focus on the things that move the needle and the things that their customers, which are the home buyers and the agents, actually care about. And a lot of times we can have an echo chamber in our industry, I think, of just having a contest of who's the best technical inspector, when there's this huge wide world that we need to cater to, and efficiencies that can happen. So great point.
Yeah, and I look at some of them like big companies, and most of them have a sample report, and you look at it, and your report might look better than theirs, but they're doing 4,000 inspections a year, and you might have more complaints. So, like I said, there's a balance. Like you don't want 50% of your jobs complaining, but if you're getting 2% complaints, spending 6 hours and you're more efficient, and you kind of let go of some things, and you get 5% complaints, but you're doing way more volume because you're more efficient, you can do more inspections. Like there's a balance there you have to figure out. You got to figure out what works, um, and think about the business side more, because the possibilities there are really high. And then if you go to train somebody, you're not going to be happy with, it's like my father-in-law, you're not going to be happy with how they do it, because they don't do it as good as you, because you've made it so difficult to train them on the
Yes.
way that you do it, because you're too thorough. And so when you go to train them, they're like, oh my gosh, like this is impossible for me to do this. And then you get upset, then you fire them, then you say, this isn't working, I'm just going to do it on my own. And then you never have your time freedom back. Like the whole purpose of starting a business for me was to have time and money freedom. You can't, like, I know some inspectors working, one of them did, I want to say 600, no, I did 620 inspections by myself. That was crazy in a year. But someone else posted recently they did 800, and I'm like, they don't have any help. But it's probably because they don't think that somebody can do a good job. But like I
It's
said,
like, does your wife still, is her wife still around? Their kids care? It's like you have to ask these other quality of life questions when someone looks at that as a badge of pride.
yeah, and like I said, don't. They're not going to be you. They're never going to be you. You could spend hours with them, years with them, and they're never going to do your report exactly how you do, because they're not you. So, what level are you comfortable at, and what systems do you have in place to make sure that they're staying at that level of quality? Like I mentioned, 85% before. I'm happy if they can do 85%. They're going to get 100%. They need to get 100% of the red items, the major stuff, but 85% of the report, of the rest of the report, is going to look at 85% as mine. We need to be okay with that, because if you look at their report and say, well, I would have done this, and it's minor stuff, and you make them change it, it doesn't really matter. So I think inspectors have a problem with that. And that's why a lot of inspectors, I think, are single man operators, because they can't let go of that.
Yep.
Um, but I'm happy if they find all the major stuff that I found. And I think most people should just be happy with that.
Yeah. Wonderful advice. Practical.
Yeah.
We've covered so much. I'm so excited for this to get out.
Let's keep going for like another 10 hours.
We're definitely going to do a part 2, guaranteed. We'll pick a topic and just run with it in the future. I think that'll be a blast. And we can make it specter facing. We can just talk to the world. But thank you so much for taking the time and taking 2 hours out of your day to chat with us. This has
Has
been
it been
amazing.
2 hours?
Been 2 hours, man. Anything that I missed, or anything obvious that I should have asked you, or anything you kind of just want to put out into the entrepreneurial and inspector world?
I don't think there's anything you miss, but I did want to ask you, like, just ask you a question.
Yeah.
Um, is that, like, you've been an agent, and you've kind of come into the inspection industry, have your software company. What's a failure, or what's like your biggest failure, and how did you kind of overcome that? And what's the story behind that?
Great question. With Inspector or just in life in
Just
general?
just up to this point in your life.
Yeah, let's. I'm usually not ready to answer questions. You caught me off guard here. So it's kind of a fun story, actually. So I had my daughter, my only daughter at this point, unplanned in college. So
Okay.
had her at an early age, had to grow up quickly, was a single dad for 6, 7 years, just doing it with the help of my parents. And so I was inspired early on in her life, just to provide for her, to not have her grow up wanting for anything. And that was kind of my why. I was like, man, I'm going to start something on my own so I could have the freedom to spend time with her and to go play volleyball with her and just go to the park with her. So that was part of my why, because it killed me leaving her
Hmm.
every day to go to the 9 to 5 or the 9 to 6 job in a cubicle when she was at home with my grandparents or a babysitter. Just killed me.
Right.
But when she was young, we went clothes shopping and we'd see all the terrible clothing out there with like, juicy on the butt for like 3-year-old girls. And I was just like, you kidding me?
Yeah.
There's nothing with a better message out here. Like,
Yeah.
so at the time, Mike and I, Mike had just moved back out to Denver. We knew we wanted to start a company together. Um, and we were both open to anything. I said, Mike, let's start just making shirts with better messages for young girls. I was just like, because that's something I would buy for my daughter.
Right.
So we started this company called Kira's Collection, and it was an apparel company with inspiring messages like about being motivated and about being strong as a young girl. Had sweatpants, t-shirts, tank tops, all of that.
That's
Um, and
cool.
I, and I still have hundreds of shirts in my basement from that. Turns out selling physical products are hard. Anything you have to store inventory, it's like the opposite of the 4-hour work week, basically,
Yeah.
where it's like you need a warehouse. So, um, we sold hundreds of shirts each year, and went on for that for 2 or 3 years. But something where it was just like, man, this is going to be tough to really scale and be profitable and sustainable, no matter how good the message, right? Because distribution comes into play when you're selling shirts. So that kind of fizzled out. And now I have free clothing that I give to my, nieces. And, Kira still wears some of the shirts to this day and thinks it's pretty cool. But it was something that just didn't take off and pan out, but we learned a ton from it.
Right.
So thanks for asking that. Great question.
Yeah.
I've never actually told that story really to anyone since starting Spectora, but it was, if you look at it from an entrepreneur perspective, a failed venture.
Yeah. I think those are important stories because, again, MJ DeMarco talks about people see the result without
Right.
seeing the process. And so, they see this guy's got a Lamborghini or he's in a magazine and like, that's amazing that he sold his company, but they don't see the 15 years of grind and the failures. And so he said, we focus too much on the result.
Yeah.
And so it's important for us to, tell our failure stories of the process and that how hard it was. Cause I think people have unrealistic expectations sometimes about what success is and that it was an overnight success. And so, talking about failures and that kind of thing, I enjoy hearing those types of stories and kind of what you learn from it and that kind of thing. So,
That's why I appreciate your story so much, because we are in the Facebook generation of like, seeing that overnight success of venture capital and the way these companies
right.
happen in a couple of years. And so hearing a story like yours, someone that doesn't know you might just think, oh yeah, this guy just starts a software company, starts doing well, and he's got a good home inspection company. They have no idea what you had to do to get there. And so that's why I love normalizing, the grind, because it's just more real. Like this stuff
Right.
does not happen overnight.
Yeah. I like hearing them because you're like, this guy is not, yeah, like you just said, it wasn't given to him. There's a grind there that we don't see. There's late nights. There's things that didn't work and failures. There's, times when you're crying and you're like, like, what am I going to do? And I like those stories.
Yeah. And that's so funny. We'll keep talking more, again, and maybe even and dive more into these stories, because I completely agree. I can empathize so much with, the midnight work and waking up at 5 a.m. and the wife saying like, hey, is this going to pull in any money anytime soon?
Yeah.
And we all
And
get it.
you're just like, just wait, just don't lose faith, just wait. It's funny because, just real quick, when I started inspecting, my wife, I didn't used to do mobile. I used to just take a camera and
Mhm.
take all the pictures, and most of the pictures were just telling me what I needed to put in the report. So I'd take a picture of the brick siding, and I put the comment, the siding type was brick, and then I delete that picture. It didn't end up going in the report. So when I first started inspecting, I literally woke up at 7, did my first inspection at 8. In the summertime, I did inspection from 7 to 9 because it was still light outside. And I come home and I had to download all those pictures, upload them all into the software, caption them all individually. Each one takes at least 3 clicks each picture. Figure out which ones I wanted to put in. So I was going to bed at 2 a.m. And my wife is like, if you're going to start this, you need to at least do 6 inspections a month. And I'm like, I don't know. 6 inspections is a lot. I think we did 6. We did 6 yesterday. And so it's funny, but yeah, just those stories, those origin stories, or the times that you struggled or hadn't made it yet. I just like hearing about those.
Oh yeah, it's what makes us. It's how we get better, man.
But nobody tells them.
I know, because we all want to seem like we just are a superhuman and just do it because
Yeah.
we're great. But
They just say, we're doing $1 million this year. Well, what were you doing 5 years ago? I want to hear that
yeah,
story.
exactly. Well, very cool. We'll wrap this up, but again, we're going to do a part 2 and 3 for sure.
Okay.
But thank you so much. I look forward to the Blipp integration coming out soon, or maybe even by the time people hear this and see this. But thanks again. This has been wonderful, and I'm sure everyone will get lots from this.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and look forward to doing it again.
Right on. We'll talk soon.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin.
All right.